Hi, this is the 275th meeting of the New York Comics and Picture Story Symposium. That's a weekly lecture series out of the illustration program at Parsons, the new school. And I am Ben Catcher. I teach in that program. And our guest tonight is E.A. Bethea. And she now lives in New York, but she's originally from New Orleans. And she's done lots of comic zines, and her work has been published by Bomb, by No Tokens, The Diner Journal, Randy, and Smoke Signal, among other zines. And her comics have appeared in the Swiss magazine Strapazin, which is a great magazine. And her comic Bit Rot was selected for Best American Comics in 2019. She's the author of 3 books. It looks like Book of Daze from Domino Books in 2017, All Killer, No Filler from 2018, and the latest book, Forlorn Toreador.
It's kind of hard to say.
What is that?
It's hard to say that.
Yeah, 2019.
Think about it before I say it. Forlorn Toreador. Yeah.
So, yeah, I discovered your work probably in the new, I'm not sure in which book. Maybe I got all of them at once. But, you know, in this golden age of alternative comics, these few people really stand out doing amazing stuff. So we're very happy to have E.A. Bethea here tonight. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Ben. So this serves here as a little bit of a warning, this first panel, just because it's gonna be a bumpy ride. I'll just say that. No, nothing to worry about. We're gonna start off with a short story by Robert Walser, who is a Swiss writer. He lived in a sanitarium, I think by choice, for the last portion of his life. And he wrote these crazy microscripts that, you know, were very hard to, you know, you had to take you couldn't read them. You had to decipher them, and it took a long time. And, you know, a lot of people think he sort of went mad. But he wrote this short piece that I've always sort of been fond of, and I read it when I was in high school, so I'm going to share that with you. We just had a big storm in New York a couple hours ago, and I actually recorded it during the rain. I have a little recording. I'm going to play it for you. And then the sun came out, which was really nice, but we'll get to that. Hold on. You can read it for yourself right here. And hold on 1 second. I'm just gonna reading this to you with raindrops and distant thunder in the background. Little Ramble. I walked through the mountains today. The weather was damp and the entire region was gray, but the road was soft and in places very clean. At first I had my coat on. Soon, however, I pulled it off, folded it together, and laid it upon my arm. The walk on the wonderful road gave me more and even more pleasure. First it went up and then descended again. The mountains were huge. They seemed to go around. The whole mountainous world appeared to me like an enormous theater. The road snuggled up splendidly to the mountain sides. Then I came down into a deep ravine. A river roared at my feet. A train rushed past me with magnificent white smoke. The road went through the ravine like a smooth white stream, and as I walked on, to me it was as if the narrow valley were bending and winding around itself. Gray clouds lay on the mountains as though that were their resting place. I met a young traveler with a rucksack on his back who asked if I had seen 2 other young fellows. No, I said. Had I come here from very far? Yes, I said, and went further on my way. Not a long time, and I saw and heard the 2 young wanderers pass by with music. A village was especially beautiful, with humble dwellings set thickly under the white cliffs. I encountered a few carts, otherwise nothing, and I had seen some children on the highway. We don't need to see anything out of the ordinary. We Already See So Much, written by Robert Walser in 1914.
Okay, so I just wanted to share that with you. I just love this little piece. It's kind of a nothing burger in a way, but there's also a lot to it. So thank you for listening. And we're gonna go on our own little ramble ourselves right now. I read that story when I was a student at the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts. And it was a translation by Susan Bernofsky. She was a former NOCA student, and she went to junior high school with my older sister at Gregory Junior High in New Orleans. And they got in a food fight once, apparently, in the cafeteria. I don't have a source for that, but that did happen. This was the book that we read, and the director of that writing program, his name was Tom Whalen, and I think he looked like Walser. Can make a comparison. I think he had a little bit of a crush on Walser. This was a like the FAME school in New York. It was a public arts school. You could study dance, theater, music, visual arts, or creative writing. And a lot of famous jazz musicians went there. The writing department was not, it was a very small department. I think the first year I did it, you'd go in the morning and it was like 6 students. And then, you know, it was like a very small thing, and you'd be spending 3 hours a day, kind of really intensively reading a lot of literature, doing a lot of film study. We would do, you know, we would have like a week of watching like David Cronenberg films, you know, really cool kind of wild stuff. Like, you know, watching Rabid, you know, with Marilyn Chambers. I don't know if you've ever seen that Cronenberg film. It's like an early one. She has like a vagina-like opening in her armpit, and then this like penis comes out and infects people. It's actually very good for what's happening lately with us with infection, and I highly recommend it. And also it was like a straight role for her. You know, she was a porn actress, and then, you know, I think it's cool that Cronenberg was like, let's make you a star, you know. So this was her star role, but that kind of, I think, dried up for her in terms of the straight role. Anyway, here's some pictures of NOCA. It was a pretty shabby building. It was like a magnet school. You had to test in. I remember when I tested in, I was, you know, in 10th grade and wanted to go there for junior, senior year. And, you know, he's like, I kind of know your parents. I'm going to let you in, but you're no good at writing. You know, it's the sort of thing where, you know, I barely got in, you know. But it was a very formative experience for me. You know, I think sometimes reading the kind of stuff we were reading, you know, I was only like 16, 17 years old. It was very intense stuff to be reading at that time, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was a really good education. I've often said that, like, when I went to college, it was like, oh, this is nothing. I'd been in college for a couple of years already. I felt like, you know, doing, you know, poetry workshops and things like that were, you know, I had that under my belt already. So the NOCA building moved to a new campus in the year 2000. You might remember this as Y2K, which was a very scary time in America. I'm just kidding. I'm making jokes, so you can't hear anybody laugh. The old building was abandoned, and I think like Chevron and a bunch of like big companies like helped to create a new NOCA. And now it's just a kind of a huge, it's still great, but it's like a corporation now, much different than the little ragtag school that I went to. This was the building that I went to. So 5 years later, Katrina hit New Orleans, and the building really went into disrepair and, you know, graffitied and just falling apart. But it actually looks kind of like the school I went to. I mean, it has a little bit of damage, but it was pretty much, you know, in bad shape when I went there. This is formerly the LaSalle Elementary School, and then NOCA, when it opened in 1977, moved into it. It was a really cool space to go to school. If you've ever seen the Fame movie, which I actually really like a lot, you know, just the idea of you have dancers in the hallways and you hear music coming out of these corners and all this stuff. And then, you know, we were up in, if you look at the building up on the right third floor, there is where we were and we were just this quiet little group of people, and the writing department, we don't know who these people are. Everyone was, you're in the writing department. We kept to ourselves, and it was a very cult-like experience in a lot of ways, which I won't go into, but I felt like I was in a program that it's like you couldn't tell your parents about it. You're reading this crazy stuff, and you had a really intense teacher who yelled at you, and anyway, that building stayed abandoned even longer, and there were people that wanted to, there was another New Orleans public school that wanted to maybe fix it, and they couldn't do it, and then eventually it ended up in private hands, which is what a lot of New Orleans public school buildings did. Also old orphanages, places that were for the public became private, which we see this happening all the time. And now this is that school. It's a beautiful condo building, and at least the bathrooms have doors, which I don't think we had doors on the bathrooms in the girls' bathrooms anyway. But it's kind of wild to see what it became. There's a theme that we're going to be exploring as we do this. So I had a homeschool. I went to NOCA for 3 hours out of the day, and then I would otherwise go to my homeschool, which was a junior and senior high. So I was there for 6 years, and it was in this really beautiful Art Deco building that was built in 1930. It was named after Eleanor McMain, who was a social activist woman who was really cool in New Orleans. And it wasn't renovated the whole time I went to school there. I mean, we had the same labs that were built in 1930. You look at old photos of this new building that was built in New Orleans. It looked exactly kind of the same, except totally destroyed by the time I went to school there. This is what it looked like when I went there. People called it the birthday cake school because it looks like a birthday cake. And it's a really neat school. The only air conditioning was on the 3rd floor. You can see that was where the library was, and there's a couple air conditioning units, and then there were some in the offices in the front. But it was like, I can't even believe that I grew up in New Orleans, which is a hot and humid place, and we didn't have air conditioning the whole time. How can you learn in this environment? I wonder. Anyway, in 2019, it got a fresh paint job. Look at that. Looks really good. I think that they actually mimicked the colors of the original building. They did a bunch of tests and were able to figure out what it was originally painted. But I mean, you can just see a lot of really cool detail and gargoyles and things like that. This is a charter school. And like most schools in New Orleans after Katrina became charter schools, which is an interesting experiment. I don't know if it was successful. I think in New Orleans, they think it wasn't, but in the process, the New Orleans public school system, which was already pretty bad and corrupt, became really nothing, It's these independent corporations now running the schools in New Orleans. Inexplicably at my school, we had a statue of the Laocoon and his sons in the foyer. You can see it there. His son's being attacked by sea serpents. I don't know why this statue was there, but it was there when my brother went there and when my sister went there, and for many, many years. But it was always kind of fun to walk into the foyer and see that. The most famous McMain alumni would no doubt be Lil Wayne. He went there for junior high. He transferred to another high school and dropped out. I believe he has a GED. But the picture on the left there, he's in Miss Cook's art room, and there's video of it. But anyway, she was also my art teacher, and she also said that I wanted to do this like after school arts program, and she was like, you're not an artist, Elizabeth, sorry. So this happens. But anyway, we can deduce that Lil Wayne is quite familiar with the anguished face of this guy. Look at that anguish. He's trying to save his sons. He has these snakes, snarled around his body. Sometime after Katrina, and with Google Street View available, I saw that the Popeyes on Broad in Tulane was now Yang's Chinese restaurant, and I drew it. Katrina, I've been living in New York since 2001. And to just watch what was happening on TV when Katrina went down was like so insane to me. And after the storm, I would just kind of look on Google Street View and see what was there, what was going on. This place was not too far from my last apartment in New Orleans. Tulane, Tulane and Broad. It was probably about 7 blocks away from where I lived. Anyway, so I did this drawing of this Popeyes, just sort of commemorating that change and what was going on in New Orleans. They actually, if you get into the description of the drawing, this is what it looked like. Oops, shit. No, hold on, people. My mail. Okay, there we go. Sorry. They actually renovated it, and it was painted. I think they painted the roof, retiled the roof in beige, and painted the lava rock ochre. But otherwise, it looked like a Popeyes. This is that Popeyes in 1980. There's a guy who's a streetcar fanatic and has a website, and he also was into buses. And so I found this photo in 1980 of the Popeyes. So, because the street view only goes back so far, I couldn't find the Popeyes otherwise. But there it is, iconic Popeyes. Yang's Chinese restaurant is now the Best Life Pharmacy restaurant, which is an unusual thing to be a pharmacy restaurant. I also wonder, are you living your best life? Think about it. Other former Popeyes restaurants also have that distinctive lava rock exterior. It's very easy to spot an old Popeyes. It just has to have that lava rock exterior and a red tiled roof. This roof has been changed at the vacuum center. But I really love this sort of repurposing of restaurants when you go by, any old chain that was something else, what is it, Howard Johnson's, or what is it? Who did the ice cream? Ben, who did the ice cream play? That's Howard Johnson's, right? Oh, you're muted. He's muted. It's okay. Am I muting you? I need to unmute Ben.
No, you can't. He's the host.
Oh, okay.
Myself. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it was probably Howard Johnson.
What with the A line roof?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Anyway, I love that stuff. I'm crazy about like this kind of architecture. What do you call it when it's vernacular architecture? Yeah. So that Popeyes was catty corner to the Orleans Parish Criminal Courthouse and Prison, which is a massive building. I have a picture of it in 1931. I got out of a couple parking tickets here, which was really cool. I had one of my landlords, I lived in a double shotgun on Magazine Street, and he was a crime scene cop. And I came home one day and he always had the crime scene van in front of our house. I always felt very safe. I lived, with this cop in a narrow little, building. And I said, "Oh, Carl, I just got like this ticket in a school zone and all this stuff." And he was like, "Give it to me." Basically, he met me at the court and got me out of the ticket, which is really cool. That's a real friend for you. A really great landlord. Anyway, they found recently there's a lot of asbestos in this, in the courthouse, and same with my school. I mean, how do you get rid of all the asbestos in all the buildings? It's everywhere. Any old beautiful building, it's got asbestos in it. Anyway, where there are courthouses, there are bail bonds people. And these are some that are just near the courthouse in New Orleans that I thought was interesting to look at. It's a desperate scene, when you're, trying to get out of jail and you have to go to one of these places. It also makes me think of Jackie Brown, which is one of my favorite movies. If I had to pick a favorite Tarantino movie, it would be Jackie Brown, because it really is such a tender love story. And, with older people, it's really cool. Also very nearby, when you'd go over this overpass, and there was this sign, "Everybody loves a good egg." And it was the American Beauty Dairy. And I always just loved this sign. I just had to share it with you. When I would drive over the overpass with my sister, I'd say, "Do you know what everybody loves?" And she'd be like, "What?" You know, she didn't know what I was talking about. I'd be like, "A good egg," you know, and I'd point to the sign. Anyway, now it is Art Studios. It closed in 2001. Also nearby, there's the Dixie Brewery, which I think is still abandoned, but there's the Falstaff Brewery, which is really cool. Apparently, there's the globe on top of the sign would light up and do certain things, and depending on the weather or the pressure, the Falstaff would light up a certain way, like a barometer of sorts. But in my lifetime, it never did that. It is also now condos. This is sort of a story of everything, and you know, all the old factories, all the old schools, everything becomes a condo in New Orleans. So I said I was about 7 blocks away from that. This is my last apartment in New Orleans. I moved to New York in 2001, 3 weeks after September 11th, which was a little scary. I'd already decided I was moving to New York, and then like September 11th happened, and I had to think about it, but I still wanted to move there. I lived up on the left side on the upper part there. I had windows. You could just like roll up all the way and go up on that porch, and a really neat building. As you can see in the comic panel, it was torn down. They built a really big medical center in this whole area, and a lot of people's homes were torn down. It's close to downtown. It was close to already a bunch of medical center stuff and hospitals, so they just like took the whole area down. A couple blocks away was the Hofbrau House. We could go get some German beer, and there was a really cool little beer garden that was torn down as well. Yeah. This is my last apartment now. If you were to look on Street View, and you can see it's just part of this huge medical complex that they built. This is the full comic, which I don't know, get the book, I guess. But it's about, you know, living at 221 South Pier. I lived there for about a year. I'd broken up with my girlfriend, and I moved into her sister's apartment, and her sister moved into my apartment. It seemed like a really convenient swap at the time. And it was kind of like not near my friends. I was living sort of in the Garden District at that point, but I really loved living there. It was a huge apartment. It was just huge. I had so much space, which I'd never had before. It was $340, which I was like, can I afford this? You know, it's very funny. Anyway, I had in my kitchen in that apartment, I had this print. It's the Bruegel print. The big fish always eats the little fish. And I had a big puddle I had to cross to get over to my apartment, which you entered from the back. And I drew this etching. Oh, no, is it Dürer? It's Dürer, never mind. No, this is Bruegel. Why does it say Dürer? Anyway, we can look at that later. Also near my old apartment was the Treme, where Storyville once stood. The red light district closed in 1917, where jazz was born. This was kind of on the outskirts of the French Quarter, and was there for about 20 years, and was really a bustling red light district. It had regulation. It had, you know, unofficial mayors. My mother had this book, Storyville, New Orleans. This is a book that I loved to look at when I was a kid. It was just wild for me to look at. I think this was like maybe the second or third copy of it she had. And by that point she wrote, "This book belongs to me," because people would borrow this book and not give it back. Because it was a really great book. These photographs, it has a lot of photographs by Ernest Belloc, who was a New Orleans photographer who hung out in Storyville, had relationships with a lot of the prostitutes in Storyville. I think Lee Friedlander found a bunch of his glass negatives and reprinted them, I think in the 70s. And those books have always been very expensive and hard to find. So this was a good place to see Belloc's photos if you wanted to see it. The guy who wrote this, Al Rose, was a New Orleans jazz historian and was like really fun to read what he has to say about everything. Anyway, you know, these are images from that book. This is a crib girl. So a crib girl would just kind of sit in her window. These are cribs on the right side of the frame. You know, you just sort of sit in your window and sell your wares. You know, men would come in. And then, you know, of course there were, you know, higher end homes run by madams and stuff like that. These are just more images of that. And also in the book, it talked about the Blue Book. I mean, I was so interested in just these pamphlets or guides to the area that you could look at. I think it you know, developed my interest in small publishing. You know, like this is a niche publishing. You know, this is like people that want to go to Storyville and you know, want to read about certain girls. Let's see. This woman, Emma Sears, is a tambourine dancer. She has no superior and very few equals. She's tall, graceful, and winning. What more can be said? I believe, yeah, she was at Lulu White's. Lulu White was known for having octoroon women work for her, which meant that, you know, you had African blood, an eighth of African blood. And here is just a typical Blue Book where you can see they're describing Josie Arlington's, you have to look at it sideways, but her home, and just some ads for local businesses and stuff. If you want to know more about Storyville, you can watch the Louis Malle film Pretty Baby with Brooke Shields and Susan Sarandon and David Carradine. It's loosely based on the life of the photographer Ernest Belloc. And this is a pretty neat movie. The story is by Polly Platt, who was married to Peter Bogdanovich. A lot of people think that Polly Platt was what made Peter Bogdanovich be good at anything, basically. You know, it's like he had a couple really great movies. She was his wife. And, you know, then they broke up. You know, famously, Peter Bogdanovich, while they were doing Last Picture Show, had an affair with Sybil Shepherd, and their association kind of ended. But she, I think she worked on Paper Moon. I mean, the good Peter Bogdanovich movies. And she had something to do with Pretty Baby. It's a pretty neat movie. Brooke Shields, you know, she's playing like a 12-year-old prostitute or something, and a lot of people, there was some controversy about that while she was doing that. But I think it's pretty tasteful, and she's even said, you know, this was an art movie, and I don't feel weird about it at all. It's not sexy. It's just, you know, it's the truth. Louis Armstrong was born in Storyville, and, you know, jazz music was born in Storyville. And I love Louis Armstrong. This is a book I have that I got at his house museum in Corona, Queens. And he was really into collage. He would take his reel-to-reel cases and collage them and write notes on them and stuff. And there's hundreds of them, and it's really cool to just see what he did. Here on the right, we've got Susan Hayward, the actress. He loved marijuana. That was something he was really into. He was also into Swiss Chris, which was a herbal laxative. I mean, you know, he was just this really kind of fun, wild guy. And I recommend going to his home. So before quarantine happened, I've been under quarantine now for, how long has it been, Ben? 6 weeks? 5 weeks?
I started March 13th. So
Okay.
April,
Yeah, I think I've been doing it around that long. Anyway, I got a last batch of library books, which was exciting. And in that was this book, also written by Al Rose, who wrote that Storyville book. And it was just kind of this really neat collection of like photos from New Orleans jazz musicians and stuff like that. And I thought this was a neat photo because Louis Armstrong in 1931, he was sponsoring a baseball team in New Orleans, Armstrong's, I guess, and Armstrong's Secret Nine. And I just thought that was a neat photo. This is the birthplace of Louis Armstrong. He was born in it was called Jane Alley. I think his grandmother had a little place in this alley, and it had these little tiny apartments, and it got torn down in the 60s, and this is what it is now. Yeah, as I was saying, he later lived in Corona, Queens. You got to go to the museum. It's really awesome. Queens College runs it, and he had the best bathroom ever. Life magazine photographed people in their bathrooms at one point, and they photographed him. It's like all gold fixtures, and the whole thing is mirrors, and it's just really fun. And his wife was really the one who was into decorating, Lucille, and it's just a neat house to go into. It's a time capsule, and I can really get behind some of her decorating. The kitchen is insanely beautiful. So before the internet, I wrote everything down. I mean, the internet was around, but I wasn't really on the internet until probably like 2004 or so. So I just I had comp books and I wrote things down. Notes, I would go to the library. When I was in New Orleans, I'd go to the Tulane Library, which you could get in if you weren't a student, and just photocopy poetry and stories and go through books and write down things I wanted to look at later. And I kind of miss those days. Everything's sort of like available to me now in a different way. But there was this time of real wonder, wondering things, really wondering, and not knowing if you're ever going to get the answer, I kind of miss that. These are just, you don't have to read it, but just like notes, I'm just writing things down. I'm going through all sorts of books and trying to, I don't know what I was doing, it's like, it's funny when you're younger, I'm in my early 40s now, but back then I had an endless wonder, I still do, but it's like I said, it's accessible to me now. But I enjoy looking through these books and sort of seeing me develop my interests. I'd write down just songs I wanted to hear. Was I going to be able to get these songs on Napster? Or, things were hard, to come across. More like lists of songs I want to hear. Notes on film. Last year at Marienbad, notes, a visual poem. The film is itself. And then I asked questions and I sought answers. The Rain People. Whatever happened to Shirley Knight? Rain People was, I think it was the first film by Francis Ford Coppola. It has James Caan in it. And it has this actress, Shirley Knight, who's also in Petulia, which is a really great movie. Whatever happened to Shirley Knight? These are things I was wondering. Things to look up. Whatever happened to Dick Gregory? It seems like I found out that he's still alive and he's a vegetarian. Whatever happened to Ronnie Blakely? If you ever seen Robert Altman's great film, masterpiece, Nashville, you would know who Ronnie Blakely is. She plays a country singer. She was actually married to Wim Wenders for a couple of years. And she was also in a movie called The Driver, which was pretty good. Anyway. When I was a kid at my grandmother's house, she had a couple editions of this book, Whatever Became Of. And it was written by a guy named Richard Lamparski. And he would do these short bios on basically stars of yesteryear who were now living in nursing homes. He'd go visit them at I think it's the motion picture retirement home, someplace in LA where if you worked in motion pictures in some way, you could go retire and have a place to die. I loved these books. Some of them are sort of catty bios, he sort of seems angry, or, if people aren't giving up enough information, he'd kind of say something nasty about them. It's really a fun little series to get into. Here's some, I drew this woman, Blossom Seeley, who was in this book, Superstar Vaudeville, Now in Nursing Home. This is a really old, early drawing of mine when I first started drawing, probably, you know, around the year 2000, Y2K, some people call it. I also I had this book here, The Young People's Story of Fine Art, and I would like cut out newspaper articles, things I wanted to, I don't know, keep for some reason. So here we have Liv Ullmann. I was really interested in her, and Bergman. Here I was obsessed from a young age. I saw Picnic at Hanging Rock, Peter Weir movie from 1975, Australian movie. I was obsessed with it, and it shows up in my comics and stuff now and again. Here we have Bjork. Remember when Dancer in the Dark came out? That was like, I felt depressed for like a week after seeing that movie. I felt totally slain by it. Oh yeah, here we have a Harvey Pekar comic that I've cut out and taped into this book. Here we have something on, damn it, why does that keep happening? Do you see my mail?
Yes.
Yeah, why does that keep happening?
I think you're accidentally going off of your
I
palette.
know, but it's so hard.
I don't know why that.
I know, how do I get rid of this thing? Okay, hold on.
There it's gone.
There we go. Okay. But where's my thing?
Uh-oh, I think the sharing went off somehow.
Yeah, hold on. Share screen. All right, I gotta get rid of this. How do I move this thing? Oh God, I have like a tab in front of it. Hold on, guys. Look at all my mail.
I don't see it now.
You don't see it?
No, I just see a slideshow.
Okay.
A little smaller shape than it was for some.
Yeah, but I wanna, okay, here we go. There we go.
Oh, there.
Here was an article I cut out about Charles Birchfield. It was a painter that I kind of discovered because I got this little book and I was really into him. He does these sort of depressing, there's a lot of like lightness to his work too, but there was a lot of like sort of dark, you know, northeastern town and the snow and just like, you know, the pits of depression stuff, but also very light stuff. He designed wallpaper, for example, which is some of my favorite stuff I think I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I can't believe this is wallpaper. In Buffalo, there's a museum, the Charles Birchfield Penny Museum, that I really want to go to. And hopefully I'll get to go there someday. Hopefully, well, it'll be around. I also like, you know, cutting out things, scrapbooking, writing notes. I also was like recording movies, dubbing movies. I had 2 VCRs and the whole rig. And, you know, anytime I rented a movie, I had to record it. This is funny now to think about that, where so many things are available to us now. But a lot of things aren't available to you now, too. You know, as you sort of realize, I mean, I remember sort of realizing with Netflix, or there were so many things that I couldn't see that I really wanted to see, and that I wish I'd kept my DVD subscription to Netflix, because all I wanted to watch was like old film noir movies, and like they didn't have those streaming. Also made a lot of mixtapes. I made mixtapes constantly. I taped over mixtapes. In this presentation, I'm not really getting into music too much, but like I have a very, you know, pretty big record collection, and I'm a music head. And anyway, we won't get into that, but I was just very into this media. Here's a drawing of a tape that had Straw Dogs on it, Don't Look Now, and The Brood, Cronenberg. Don't Look Now, if you've never seen it, Nicholas Roeg movie, is one of the best movies ever made. Here is a panel from a comic I did where I'm talking about movies. How do I get rid of the screen? Okay. I'm thinking of a couple of scenes in movies I love. Pearl recalling the Kennedys in Nashville, and Paula in Night Moves asking Harry where he was when Kennedy was shot. Which Kennedy? Any Kennedy? We have more than one Kennedy shot. Your feet feel large stones at the bottom of the river, but they are slick. My memories are often memories of scenes from movies, faded Eastman color, picture postcards, wet on a picnic table after a light afternoon rain. Eastman color kind of notoriously faded, if that was your film stock. And here we have this character Pearl from Nashville. I was just looking at that TV set and seeing it all, seeing that great fat-bellied sheriff saying, "Ruby, you son of a bitch," and Oswald and her in her little pink suit. And then Paula in the movie Night Moves, which is an Arthur Penn movie that I really love with Gene Hackman. I remember Bobby when he got shot. The newsreels made it look like everything was happening underwater. I like that. I have the lobby cards from the movie Night Moves because I love that movie so much. And I wonder whatever became of Jennifer Warren. If you've ever seen the movie Ice Castles, she plays this kind of sadistic figure skating coach. And she's really good in that. She's an associate professor at USC School of Cinematic Arts. There she is now. Great actress. This is a panel from a book I did. When I was 21, I coveted a book I could not afford. I would cruise it at the bookstore, pick it up and put it back, and pick it up and put it back. And now the book is worth a ton and I still can't afford the book. It will never be mine. I really wanted this Nan Golden I'll Be Your Mirror book. It was cool. It was only about that big. And I just like implore you, will someone please give me this book so I can stop blathering on about it? I coveted this book also, which I have. Film Posters of the Russian Avant-Garde. I was kind of really blown away by these. The one on the left, I had a poster of that on my kitchen door for a long time. Alex Katz, 20 years ago when I ran across Alex Katz's work, I was really into it. It's funny, I'm sort of showing you guys stuff I was into 20 years ago, and it's much more expanded. And it's like, sadly, this very sort of white male world, but that's what I was introduced to back then. I don't know, I just always loved like the fluidness of the people, and I thought their eyes really actually expressed something. If you don't know about Mingering Mike, it's really cool. He, hold on. He made these sort of fake record covers, and he would even have inserts, sleeves, and make the label on the actual vinyl. And they're just amazing. And I thought this one, Isolation, was, apropos, since a lot of us are in isolation right now. Oh. Here's more Mingering Mike. But when you drink alone. Life's a bitch. I love that what he says here at the bottom. Sometimes I truly feel this way, that it's the pit hole of existence. This is a photography book by Jim Goldberg that when I was a dropout, a college dropout, which is probably shocking to a lot of you. But this book was in the library at Bard College when I was there for the 2 years I was there. And it was a different cover. This is a reprint. Rich and Poor by Jim Goldberg. And I just loved this book, and I dreamed about it for years, and I couldn't find it. And I would look at other Jim Goldberg books. He did a book on teenage runaways called Running with the Wolves, I think, which was incredible. He's just a great sort of documentary photographer. But he would visit these like single room occupancy hotels in San Francisco, and meet people, become friends with them, and take photos of them. And then he would give them a copy of the photo, and then they would give him a copy of the photo, and they would write on the photo, which I thought was really neat. This guy says, I am going to build an empire. And this guy says, I love the picture. I am a homosexual. Me too. Maybe if I send one of the pictures you gave to me, Jim, to my nephew, he will understand how hard his uncle is struggling. There's more of them. This life is like a cheap sorted movie, the type middle America would like. It's boring. I sleep. I keep waiting for something to happen. I am doomed to be in this place. I have no future. Oh. This was a book my friend Patrick Holmes was like, you got to get this book. And I ordered it. But it's, just, guys living on the Bowery in the 70s. But I thought this was an interesting image. Someone trying to get some help from one of the cars. And in the wintertime, it's a bitch. They all got the windows up because now all the cars is air conditioned. So it's tough in the summer too. I was thinking about, I never thought about that, but yeah, we get in this like closed off environment in the car, the windows weren't always up, and now they are. And I hesitate to say that, oftentimes at an intersection, I just roll my window up. Does that make me a bad American? This is a book by George Deroe, who was a New Orleans artist. He died, I don't know, probably in the last 5 years. And he painted, but he also took photographs. And he sort of worked in this kind of classical style, like sculptural style. And he often worked with people that had, some deformities or had been in the war and lost parts of their bodies and stuff. But I thought there's a dignity to what he was doing when he photographed these people. I was really into like these kind of books, like series of books about, the Old West or crimes and punishment. I have 4 of them, and I like the covers. But I was reading through one of them, and I saw this picture of, the Moors murderers. And then, Raymond Pettibon famously lifted this image for the cover of Goo by Sonic Youth. And I wonder, did he read these books too, like I did? This is a book I really love, like Woody Guthrie's journals and political cartoons and things that he did. I love the kind of dreamy on the left, just sort of this dream. And trouble ain't worth nothing, so I won't charge nothing to fix it, the trouble buster. A liberal is a feller that would like to get his hands on something to give to the poor. I like that. Get these Republican goggles off our people so they can see what's going on. Get your Republican goggles off. Wilfred Lemonius is really cool. Like a Jamaican dance hall artist, did a lot of covers for records. Love the color, love the figures. I just love everything about this. I just love it. Yellow is you rule. It's a Yellow Man cover. Got to talk about Joe Brainerd. I love Joe Brainerd. I saw, I think it was at PS1, probably in the early 2000s, maybe 2004, they had a show of his work, and really enjoyed seeing some of the stuff up close. Nancy stuff, If Nancy Was an Ashtray, was there. And this is his studio on the right. And, it's just cool to see somebody working out all these things, having all these images out, thinking about, similar to what I do, I think in some way, but a lot of people, but just, there's so much we bring in, and then what is it going to synthesize into, And I'm a junkie for information and visual language and picture stories is what this symposium is about. I've always been into that, and I just sort of enjoy seeing him have you have to have all the stuff out to make the thing. It can't be in a drawer. You're not going to know what it is. Of course he wrote I Remember, which was a great collection of memories. I love this one. I remember visions when in bed but not asleep yet, of very big objects becoming very small and of very small objects becoming very big. I like that. All right, now we get to, this is a book that I read. This was like put in the children's section of a used bookstore in New Orleans when I was a kid. And it was State Street Books. And my mother always said, that man is very strange that runs that place. It was like a place, a paperback bookstore, everything's half price from the posted price. And he actually ended up like killing himself, this guy, much later. I read all these stories about it in the Times Picayune in the paper. But he was a strange man. My mother's always like, he's just a strange man. When you're friendly to people and they're just kind of like a little odd, but you're giving them money. My mother had a policy sort of, which was like, if we went to a bookstore, especially a place like this where they weren't very expensive, that you could buy whatever you wanted, so I could walk out of any bookstore with like 10 books and it really, we read a lot, all me and my brother and my sister because of that. So this book I found probably when I was 9 or 10 and read, and it's like such an incredible book. It was reissued recently, I think by New York Comics Review, I think. But this is my copy. I almost thought about, I need to get it. And I was like, I have it. I have my copy. It's just full of, the borders, for example, are just so intricate. And there was just so much going on and cross-hatching. And I really found it fascinating. The story, in a nutshell, is about this guy, Malcolm Frazzle, who I think he works for Dishwasher Weekly as a poet, which is just funny to think about, Dishwasher Weekly has a in-house poet pumping out the poems. And he meets a woman on a bus, this woman, Helga. And I remember this panel, I remember reading it and just being kind of blown away with it. She says to him, it's this panel, the third panel, she says, your eyes have the best radios I've heard in years. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. Your eyes have the best radios I've heard in years. Sometimes I say to people, your eyes have great radios, and I'm referring to this, but they don't know that. There's like some close-ups of the panels. I'm gonna take a look at it. These people never met again. This has happened to me on buses too. You have great conversation, talk about Jerry Garcia with some girl and all this stuff, and then you never meet him again. My moon is in Libra, so is mine. My son is at home in bed. Oh, wow, that indicates strong maternal tendencies. Never met again. But he meets Helga, and his life has changed forever after that, because he has to save the world essentially from monkeys making tissue burgers, so that we don't all eat tissue burgers. Anyway, I'm going to kind of skip through that. This was a Christian comic that was kicking around my house that I really loved when I was a kid. I don't know where we got it. My brother had it. My older brother had comics. The Prodigal Son, he's leaving. He wants his inheritance now. He's going to go do his thing. And that includes cars and money and mariachi and a yacht or a sailboat called the hedonistic Hedon, and throwing lots of parties. But his girlfriend the next morning, Pete, look at the sunrise. It's so beautiful and pure, and I feel so ugly and polluted. Eventually, he kind of figures out that his life is not great, and he goes home, and forgiveness for food, grace or humility. you know, Jesus. This is another kind of anti-drug comic book that I really loved. Nancy Reagan had something to do with this. And it was funny with these books about drugs because I didn't know what angel dust was. And, you know, I was like, do I want to do it? Maybe. I mean, you know, you're hearing about things. I don't know if it was like working in the way it was supposed to. You know, it made me more curious about drugs than anything. And he had a lot of bad trips on it. And here we have a declaration that you can sign yourself at the back of the comic book to be drug-free. This is a swingers magazine that I picked up somewhere along the way in my life that is just a great source of like people watching, like this guy here on the right. And this guy, this executive, he's into all gentle forms of erotic stimulation. And I made my own version of this guy for one of my comic books a long time ago. I love dictionaries of slang, thesaurus of slang. This page here is like them getting into tramps and criminals and different words through the years. I love old one, and this is 1943, but you know, studying language and slang has always been something I've been really into. And it shows up in my work sometimes. We're kind of getting into just books I have that are just kind of good references, you know, woodcuts and things like that. Here we have some cats, a handbook of early American advertising art. I mean, it's basically clip art, you know, but long ago, before digital clip art, and it's really neat. It's a good reference. Trademark designs of the 20s. I love this shit. The Sears Roebuck catalog from like 1897. This is like so fun for me to look at. I could just like get in bed and read this book before going to bed, the way that, you know, other people might read, I don't know, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven or something. I drew actually this toilet paper in the Sears catalog. It's not perfect, but you know. Pictorial Webster's. I bought this book just because it had images from old Webster's, and I love that. Here's a French dictionary I have that, or yeah, dictionary. Well, translation, but I love some of the images from. This is a great book. What's What? It was a visual glossary of the physical world, where you could find out, you know, that is called the stimulator tip at the end of your toothbrush. Did you know that before? It's great. It's an amazing book. It would even have like hobo signs. Or Ben, does your computer look like that?
No.
No.
No, it never had that kind.
No.
No, I started this with a little apple. Okay.
Well, is right. Yeah. Anyway, it's a great reference to that book. Also, lettering books I enjoy. I'm just showing you stuff from my collection. This particular lettering on the right, I kind of used for a poetry book cover that I did for my friend once. And that's an image of Rosemary that I drew. Rosemary, of Rosemary's Baby. This is Tom Tierney, who did a lot of paper dolls that I love and that my grandmother would give me. He would do illustrations of women's heads. This is more clip art stuff. I mean, I guess if you were a graphic artist at that time, you would cut these out and maybe make a layout with these drawings. I have a bunch of these Art Directors Club annuals. These are great. Just really fun to look at. What was going on in advertising, you know, in any particular year. You know, here we've got, you know, Esquire and Avant-Garde magazine. They're showing covers from that. This is a book that I really love. It's an autobiography of Veronica Lake, and she was a, you know, Hollywood actress and didn't have a very long career and kind of pissed people off. She's like Frances Farmer, like, you know, a lot of people that kind of left Hollywood. Or could, you know, their careers are sort of shriveled up because they were a little bit rebellious. But in her book, I mean, I put some text from it. I mean, it's very sexy. He took me again with a gentle vengeance, and they lay there with the ashtray on her naked belly. I mean, it's really, I don't know, provocative stuff. And she's asking him, she's dating this merchant marine, Andy, and she asks, you know, will you bring me something from India? And then later on, I wrote a comic about it, and he brought her a cobra brain, which is cool. And there's some pictures of her kind of later in life. And then she didn't live much longer after these pictures on the left. She was a pretty bad alcoholic. And she was buried at the Frankie Campbell funeral home, which is in the city. And a lot of famous people have been buried there over the years. And you do wonder what happens up in that window. They have this like kind of blocked off window. Is that where the embalming happens? I've written a lot about Charlie Parker and thought a lot about Charlie Parker. And this is a book that I really enjoyed reading. It came out like a few years after he died, and it's really like an oral history of him, and has all these great moments in it. This is a comic I wrote largely about Charlie Parker, but it's about a lot of things. There goes my mail again. This is driving me insane. Hold on. We're gonna just kill the mail. Okay. There we go. A quote from one of Bird's friends talks about Charlie being neurotic. But the great strides in the arts are not made by happy, well-adjusted people. Art is a form of sublimation and is created by neurotics and compulsion-ridden people, not by the happy 9-to-5 family man. Neurosis itself is not productive, rather it is burdensome, but it is the suffering that is reflected in tranquility, or that is sublimated, that produces art. It is somewhat like the thought of Wordsworth when he said that poetry is great emotion reflected in tranquility. Neurosis cannot be of too great an intensity, or the person is immobilized by it. I got really into a few months back this idea of sublimation, of sort of taking these things and through your art you make it sort of more socially acceptable. And there's Bird as a baby, which I drew him. I'm gonna start rushing through the slides so we can kind of wrap this up, Ben.
Okay.
Are we doing okay on time?
Yeah, there's no hurry.
Okay. All right. So anyway, yeah, Charlie Parker, very interesting guy, genius. I've drawn a lot of portraits of people, some jazz people. Here's Bill Evans, who I really love. This is him. I mean, he was probably dead within the year later in his life, but he would wear these kind of rose-colored glasses at that point in his life. And I just sort of, I find him really captivating. And Mingus, of course, Cookie Mueller, writer, Bon Vivant that I love. You know, Walt Whitman, when he lived on Long Island before he came to the city, probably had a relationship with a young man. I think back then the standards were maybe it's okay to have a relationship with a 16-year-old boy. I don't know. But he got ran out of town and he was tarred and feathered. So I drew it. This is the Junkyard Dog, who was the most famous wrestler in New Orleans. He played for the Mid-South Wrestling, and then he played for the, I don't know, whatever Vince McMahon's thing is. But he was a star in New Orleans. When I was a kid, and you talk about Junkyard Dog, it was like he was bigger than Michael Jackson. This is Adrian Adonis, who used to be kind of a tough, like, he was like a motorcycle kind of wrestler. And then he decided he's going to change his bit and be a gay wrestler. And so he wore like, he had feathers and balloons and shit on his, and, ribbons and stuff on his body. It didn't last very long, the shtick. Here's Christopher Columbus. He died wrapped like a sausage in blankets, bleeding from his eyes. True story. Here's Lil Peep, who I love. You know, he was a musician that died a few years ago. He's actually from Long Beach, which is not far from where I live in Far Rockaway. And there was a great documentary that came out a few months ago about him that's totally worth watching, called Everybody's Everything. And it was produced by Terrence Malick, a great film director who did, you know, Badlands and The Thin Red Line, all sorts of stuff. Gwen Ifill, PBS NewsHour anchor. I still miss her. I'll miss her the rest of my life. I miss that voice. She was a great great journalist. Here we have Jean Seberg. I drew her a long time ago. Donna Summer, drew her a long time ago. Ian Sexton in her psychedelic dress. This is, I think, sort of like going back to like Alex Katz or something. I think I was trying to kind of make this drawing a little like him. Art Neville, he just died. He was a New Orleans musician, part of the Neville Brothers. I drew this for a project called Faces of Death, which is a t-shirt, annual t-shirt that shows everybody who died that year. Here's a panel from one of my comics. It has Freddie Mercury. Outside it is snowing and I long for spring. On the stereo, Freddie Mercury is singing, "Who Wants to Live Forever? I do, Freddie, I do." And he's singing the theme from Highlander, the movie. There's no time for us. There's no place for us. What is this thing that builds our dreams yet slips away from us? Who wants to live forever? Love, Buckminster Fuller. Things have always been realer than you can ever imagine. God is a verb, not a noun. I was thinking, I'm not religious, but if I had a religion, it would be New Orleans, which is, you know, where I'm from. I was looking through the McDougall Street. You become very depressed. You considered suicide, but your guidance counselor advised against it. There's no future in it, Malcolm, this panel. And then I realized that I had a panel that was similar, which is I collect old matchbooks. I love the past, but there's no future in it. And this is from a place that was on Tulane Avenue, which is where the Popeyes was that we started off with this presentation. There were a lot of, Tulane Avenue was actually like it was Highway 61. I mean, when in New Orleans, it had a different name, but that's Highway 61. That would take you all the way up to Minnesota. And don't you just hate it when you're wrapped in the world of a film and they throw the end up on the screen? I'm about to do that. I'm done with my exegesis on the decline and fall of the American love goddess, hooked on whatever makes the time pass better. The end. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you. Thank you guys for listening.
Great, I'll unmute everybody so they can applaud.
Thanks, guys.
So, yeah, so we could do questions. If you just put your name up on the chat, I'll unmute you. Everyone's unmuted, I think. No, almost everybody. But if anybody has any questions.
Do you have any questions?
Me? So why did you leave? I wonder why people leave New Orleans. People who grew up there.
Well, it's a slow place. I mean, it didn't feel like a lot of people in New Orleans like become like alcoholics or junkies. I mean, that's why I felt like the people I was around, a lot of people were just, it's just a place where there's not much. I think I needed a place where I could feel like more was asked of me or something. I know that sounds weird, but like I just felt like there I could live a life. You could live a life. You could work in a cafe. You could actually make pretty decent money doing something like that, and you could sort of live this like kind of chill life. But I think I just wanted more. I wanted to go to film forum. I had a subscription to the New Yorker. Like look at my New Yorker. I'd be like, I want to see this movie so bad. And I couldn't see it. It would never come, or maybe it would come like months later. Right. It was a lot about film, honestly. And then when I moved to New York, I never went to film forums. So I mean, I've been to Film Forum, but it wasn't like a weekly thing like I thought it would be.
Right.
Maddie, do you have a question?
So, so many. No, Go to somebody else. I didn't put my name up.
Okay. Oh, no, but I was just looking at you.
That guy, Richard Lamparski, had a radio show on WB. It was out of the Pacifica. Did you?
No, I've done some research on him, and I know that he had a radio show, but I don't.
Yeah.
I never got to hear it. I mean,
it's all up on the Pacifica Archive. Put up the link if you want.
Oh, okay, very cool.
Listening.
Yeah, I mean, whatever happened to Richard Lamparski?
Yeah, there he is.
Very cool.
I have a question now. Have you ever thought of getting your own radio show where you like do this like weekly?
No, but should I? I mean, this took me a long time to do.
A podcast.
A podcast.
Zoe says a podcast.
Yeah, I would love to do something like that. I mean, I love, you know, the hard part is like making a PowerPoint and stuff. I spent like, you know, hours and hours and hours like culling images and, you know, but yeah, if I could just wing it and talk about stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like oral histories.
Oral histories. My oral history.
Yeah.
I feel like this could have, you know, if we had all the time in the world, this would have been like a really long, like I could have gone on forever. You know, it felt like that at a certain point. And I was like, I have to like kind of like dial back a little bit. You know, this is like a small portion of things that have interested me or inspired me through my life, you know.
So what led you to this kind of text image work rather than, you know, painting like Alex Katz or something like that?
Well, you know, like I said, you know, I came from like a writing background, and I really thought I was going to be like a poet.
Oh, I see.
And I mean, I am a poet, but you know, my young ideas of what that meant, you know, I didn't really know. I didn't know that like you couldn't really. I mean, you can make money and be a poet, but you have to be a professor or something. You know, you have to like get into academia. But at some point around when I first started doing comics around 1999, I was having that poetic urge, but I wanted imagery with it as well, and I started playing around with that. Basically, I was like, I want to draw. You know, there's some people like Donald Barthelme who, you know, is a fiction writer, and he would have graphs or drawings in his books, and I was really intrigued by that, you know, playing around with the genre. And I mean, my early stuff is just really primitive, and you know, I never took an art class. I never really learned how to draw. Sometimes I draw things better than other times, and I don't really worry about it too much. I do like the immediacy of just, you know, this came from my brain to my hand, and what you see is what you get a little bit, you know. I'm not gonna like, I labor on things sometimes a lot, but you know, sometimes I don't, and sometimes it, you know, it comes out of like you want, you know. But,
what's all this crashing? Wait, let me mute everybody. Hold on.
yeah, what's going on?
Some kind of riot. So yeah, if you have a question, you can just type it in there. Anybody? Everybody, yeah. Oh, it's amazing how many overlaps I had with your things you were looking at, book-wise, more than movie-wise, but book. Oh, I muted myself. No, I'm open. Wait, I muted you.
Yeah, there, I'm muted. I thought I was muted.
Now you're unmuted. Okay. Oh, here's a question from Bill. Let me unmute him so we can hear his voice.
Mm-hmm.
More fun. Okay. Oh, wait a minute.
Hey, Bill.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned Brainerd, and you showed stuff like to Nancy and his working on his collage stuff and his writing. Have you seen the comics collaborations he did with various poets of the New York School?
Yeah, I have some of those books and stuff. Yeah, I have seen it. And it's cool. I almost included some imagery, some of the covers he did for some of those chapbooks and stuff, but I just was, for economy didn't do it. But yeah, no, I mean, I love him, yeah, it's great.
Anybody else? So how did Domino, how did Austin English come to publish one of your books?
So Austin, I think, he wrote me an email probably almost like 10 years ago, and he had a copy of a book I had made. A friend of mine had published a book of mine that was kind of like all my early work, probably from like the year 1999 to like 2009. And he had found it. He was living actually with Bill in a house in Bushwick, right? You guys were living, or yeah, you're on the train in Bushwick, I believe.
Williamsburg.
Oh, in Williamsburg. Oh yeah, you were in Williamsburg, yeah. And my book was there on a coffee table basically, and he, wrote me about it and was wondering about what I was doing, and we just kind of kept in touch from there. And it was very funny. I mean, he approached me in 2017. I was really trying to think about putting a book together and sort of feeling like I needed that, like I needed a push. I hadn't been making a lot of work or getting it. I've never been good at getting it out there. I'm not this person that's like, here's my work, come and get it, or pushing it on people. I'm not like sending emails to people trying to like get people to buy my work or anything like that. I give my book away to people all the time. You're not supposed to do that. I just give everything away. He was like, I'm thinking about making, another book for Domino. And, I was thinking we could do a little thing. And so then we put out Book of Daze, which came out in 2017. And then since then, I've been pretty consistent about trying to get work out every 6 months or every year or so. So, yeah, he's been really wonderful to know, and has introduced me a lot of really cool art and artists. So I really dig Austin. He's a cool guy.
And I never found out where or how that book got into that house.
Oh,
and I've never been able to, there were always so many comics in that house. And then that one was prominently placed somewhere. And I remember asking around everyone who was there at the time, do you know whose book this is or how this got there? And I've never been able to figure it out.
The mystery, yeah.
It's a mystery, but it's a very happy. It's great that it happened for me.
That book is like one of these books that I'm like, I love that book, but I'm also like, it's like my early work, and I feel like I got better at what I was doing, or when I look at it, I'm like, I cringe a little, but there's good stuff in there, but it's you know what I mean?
Oh, of course.
I like look at your earlier work. I wish it was better.
I don't even know how that book got into the apartment, but I remember seeing it regularly at the bookstore in Williamsburg, Spoonville, and Sugartown. But I always like look at the book, and I was kind of intrigued by it, and I was like, this is kind of interesting. Like, I've never heard of this person. And then it just showed up in the apartment at some point, and it was just like kicking around in the living room, and it would sort of like migrate between the living room and the bathroom. I was assuming maybe our roommate Carly brought it into the house, but I was never sure.
It
cosmic.
Be a mystery. Yeah, it's cosmic. Exactly. It's pretty cool.
Along, like, for other people who are involved with comics, just do things just churn through the apartment.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I'll always. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, Austin, go.
I was just going to say, the thing that I really responded to immediately with it, especially in the context of it being in that house, is that we'd always, there were a lot of different cartoonists who lived there, and you'd see different zines or works in progress from people that had been working with comics, or that you knew they'd been working with comics for a long time, or you knew different phases of their work. And a lot of the time the work would be, you would see work in zines that was very labored or figuring out what it wanted to say. And then your work, just seeing this one thing that I'd never seen before was so, it was so direct and so immediately it communicated so beautifully right off the bat, and that's what I remember about it immediately. And it's only gotten more that way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think, I started this presentation kind of talking about like my early schooling or whatever, but I feel like I was able to develop a voice early, or I've had, friends say, you have a developed voice, like, it's coming from a place that knows where it's going and knows where it's been or something, something along those lines. And, I think I've just been at it for a long time, like in terms of like, and it's not comics, but just like sort of writing and delving into art and literature and all these things, and like knowing what, makes my, triggers, makes like turns me on, like I know what I like, and I know what I don't like. I avoid the things I don't like. I go for, all these things, developing your taste and your personality and all of these things. It's all important, like my taste is important to me, like what, I can't bring everything into my life, it's like I need to only, even if people are like this, I think you'll really like this book, or, I have to, sometimes I think I try to like, I don't read a lot of comics, for example. I don't read a lot of comics. I make comics, I do this thing, but I wouldn't say I'm like deeply involved in the comics world, and I have to like, I feel like it's important to kind of, to keep your, the essence of what you're doing is to sort of just like keep doing what you're doing, and maybe sometimes not take in too much, or at least for me, or go into other genres, other forms of art. I'd rather sort of like go deeper into other, literature, art, whatever, than just like comic art or something. Do you know what I mean? I've never just strived to make comic art. It is what it is. It's either poetry or a comic. I don't know what it is, what I do. People call it different things. It's poetic comics, or, but it's just what I do. At the end, I just want it to be like what I did, and it doesn't really need a name,
Right.
Sometimes it's not that poetic at all, but.
Yeah, that was a great part of the talk about when finding things in the library or in bookstores was like this miracle that happened. And you couldn't just go online and say, I'm going to find it. You couldn't. So,
yeah. I remember like being in the Barnes and Noble at Union Square in like 1996 and looking at this like Basquiat book and just sort of being blown away by it. But, I would go in like bookstores or libraries and just like hang out, and really like, I couldn't take photos with my phone or anything. You really had to kind of take it in a different way than we do now, There's a certain laziness to all this technology that we have now. And, I just, I really like long for those days when I didn't have a TV and I was living in some little, efficiency apartment and I didn't, I just had books, and then I would walk over to Tulane and look at books there and photocopy. I had so many photocopies of stuff that I just, poems and short stories and things. And it's just like the way you gleaned things back then was different, And the gleaning part is the fun part of everything, It's like, what can we find, It's the same thing. I love to go to thrift stores. What am I going to find? What am I going to find?
anyway.
Well,
Else? Yeah, I think there are 800,000 podcasts now. And I don't know, when I listen to one that goes on for more than an hour, I say, how do people have all this time?
I've definitely thought about doing a podcast, but it would be similar to this. It wouldn't have, a lot of structure to it,
Yeah, well.
Just talk about cool stuff. I mean, that's kind of what I want to do.
Yeah, I'm sure there's an audience somewhere for that kind of a podcast. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a kind of right. That was the hardest thing in the world, to be on the radio. There were just like 2 alternative radio networks. It was impossible to get on the radio. Now everybody can be on the radio.
Right. We all have a platform now.
Yeah. So
We had to like fight to get a platform before, like, you know.
yeah. Yeah, it's something. But anyway, people still find these enormous audiences, and so that still happens to people.
Yeah.
It's not as spread thin as it appears sometimes, especially among cartoonists. It's sort of
Seems like a pretty small world.
spread out audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think the minute you do something, my new book is not a comic strip, and it's not even marketed to that world, and is instantly more readers than any comic I would make, which is really strange for me. It's like, just stop doing comics and you'll find. I mean, they're just people who still have a real prejudice against the form, and they wouldn't look at the same thing if it were in a comic.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean,
You do.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's a strange.
It doesn't Matthew Thurber, didn't he write a article about that, Bill? Maybe you know about that, but about you know, why aren't there comics at the Whitney Biennial, or why, you know, like why are comics so disregarded? And it's such a huge thing. I mean, even like, you know, all the YA stuff. I mean, that's all kids read these days, are comics, you know? I just feel like it's an expanding genre, but it's still kind of relegated to this like lesser than, you know. I mean, people like you are doing good work to sort of like bring light to it, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, right, that your biographer will have to sort through all these books,
Oh, geez.
figure out what percentage, which really had it, you know, what the percentages were of influence of all this material.
I mean, when you self-publish books too, you often do very limited runs. I remember you gave me one comic one time, and it was like, I think there were only maybe 20 or maximum 50 copies. I'm thinking of Faded Frankenstein.
Faded Frankenstein, I only made like, I think probably 20 copies of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, Faded Frankenstein had work that ended up in Book of Daze, and you know, it's like, but yeah, but it has stuff that wasn't in nothing else too, you know. Yeah, I mean, I have like a lot of material that doesn't end up in a book. It's like, I mean, I store everything in like, you know, like these kind of things, you know. So it's like all my work, because it's all the same size, which is 8.5 by 11. I can like store it very easily in all these, you know, folders, and it's like a really I love the you know, it's a democratic kind of cheap thing I do, you know. I use like cheap paper and cheap pens, and you know, I can bring it anywhere. It's like I got to go to LA and show some film producer my work. It's just, you know what I mean? It's like, it's easy. Imagine if I had to paint and like had all these big canvases all over the room, and you know, getting in the way, falling over, they tumble over, and forget it. I'd rather just draw. Huh?
Do you only work in your house, or do you work when you're out? Like, can you like make actual work in cafes, or do you just like sketch and take notes there?
Cafes? What is a cafe, Bill? When's the last time you left your house, Bill? No, I never was a person that carried around like a sketchbook and was like on the train or in the cafe, like sketching. I don't like sketch things. The other thing is, if I'm drawing something, it's like there's a real intent behind it. Like, I don't just draw for fun. I think when you're in art school, you do these things. You're like, you learn to sketch all the time, and like people have notebooks full of sketches and all this stuff. It's like, if I'm gonna create something, it's like, I generally write it out first, actually. I work a lot through the language of it and kind of the panel form, like how is this gonna, like a stanza in poetry, like how are you gonna like lay this thing out? I mean, it's all written out before I put it on paper, you know? In the past, I was not as good about that. When I was ending up with all this whiteout all over the place, and I was like, let me get the writing locked down before I get to paper, you know? So, but yeah, it's very intentional what I'm doing. You know, it's not just I like to draw and sketch and I have a hobby, or, you know, it's like, it almost feels like something has to come out of me, you know, like I've got to like get this thing out that I get, you know, transfixed by some notion, idea, or whatever, and I have to make a comic about it eventually, you know, so, or some obsession with something. I have like these longer pieces I've been working on, and I've got the writing pretty much locked down. I just have to draw them, and, you know, I'm going to get to it soon, but it's just, the drawing is the harder part for me, you know, and I like the way I draw and I like the way it comes out in the end, you know, but it's not like the natural thing for me, you know. I don't just like pick up a pen and just, you know, much harder. But I can sometimes draw things all right, you know. So I like whatever the end product is, I'm happy with. I'm not putting my work down, you know, like I like the way it looks. My work's gotten a lot darker lately. I think there's a lot more shading and a lot, you know, there used to be a lot of white space, and like it's become a lot more dense. You know, I'm evolving as an artist. We'll see what happens next.
Okay. Anybody? If nobody, anyone else? Or
Last call.
we can, oh, wait, something jumped. Oh, great discussion. Thank you. So let me unmute everybody so they can give you one last round of applause.
Oh, that's great. So fun.
Anyway.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Okay, thank
Oh,
you.
thanks. So fun.
Thank you.
Guys, have a good night and everybody be safe.